This is the Launch Station, the only place you need to look for all things onboarding, implementation, and customer success. Tune in for insights from industry experts every week.
Hey everyone, this is Sri. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Station. Every show, we speak with top professionals and thought leaders about all things customer success, onboarding, and implementation services. Today, we have with us an exceptional customer success leader who's had the unique opportunity to be part of transformation of CS strategy at notable organizations, not once, but twice. And this is today's topic, leading a customer success team through a transition. Our guest currently manages customer success at Infor and has served in leadership roles at companies like Oracle and Team Enterprises in the past. He's also a loving dad, a hockey coach, and an amateur mixologist. So let's welcome Michael Hurley. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Sri. Great to be here.
Awesome. Let's get started with an icebreaker. If you could learn one new professional skill and one personal skill, what would they be?
I would professional skill, I would definitely say just to continue to evolve as a stronger leader. Anything I can do to get better as a leader will make my team stronger. That's for sure. Personal skill, I always wanted to learn to play the guitar. I bought a guitar a few years ago and I still have not started doing lessons. So that's definitely something I want to dive into. The only other thing I can think of is if I knew how to build a time machine, that would be pretty cool also.
Those would be great skills to add, especially the time machine. Mike, we know this works differently in companies of different stages and maturity, but can you share your perspective on when a CSM should ideally get involved in the customer's journey with a company?
Yeah, great question, Sri. Where I would interject the CSM is just before the deal closes. There isn't a better time to get a CSM involved because it helps start off and kick off that relationship with the customer. If you interject a CSM, later on, you might not have as much bandwidth or opportunity to try out different CSMs with the customer, and you really want to make sure that there's a commonality among personalities to help mature that relationship. And really, during the implementation, it's critical for the CSM to be in that space, not so much to help the implementation, but really to make sure that the customer and the implementation partner are being held accountable for their roles and responsibilities. It is the most challenging thing the customer will go through in their journey with your company, and having the CSM there to really help build that relationship and ensure the success of the customer and the timely completion of that implementation is really an important trigger. The other thing you can do is some companies have implementation success managers. Those are also a crucial role and can be a vital role alongside the customer success manager during that implementation period.
Perfect. Makes a lot of sense, Mike. So tell us, how did you foray into this whole world of customer success?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a strange path for me. I'm sure everyone, a lot of people went from consulting into customer success or came from other careers or started in sales, but I actually started with a company called Team Enterprises, working with two specific clients, Bacardi USA and Miller Brewing Company. I spent about 3 or 4 years with Miller and then 5 years as a divisional manager with Bacardi. And really that's where I probably honed my ability to build and maintain multiple relationships simultaneously with a lot of different personalities. And then I owned my own business. And again, I had to evolve and be more of an entrepreneur there. That really helped hone my skill as a CSM to be independent. And then going to Oracle as a customer success manager and eventually a leader there, it really helped to continue further my understanding of what it was to be a customer success manager, really how to help my customers and really to juggle the different personalities, both internally and externally. And now I'm very fortunate to be a part of Infor. I've only been there 4.5 or 5 months, but we are going through a customer success transition, and it's been a lot of fun. And having experience doing that at Oracle has really helped myself and my team and my peers move through that transition very quickly and without too much stress and concern.
Got it. That's a pretty interesting journey you've had there, Mike. So when you build CS teams, What are the traits that you look for in the candidates that you hire?
Good, good question, Shri. I really believe, the professional experience that somebody brings to the table, the professionalism that they show in front of you during an interview, the behavioral traits, the honesty, integrity, and the value system that they have, and really the ability to develop strong relationships. I realized when I was a CSM how important it was to have that relationship building experience prior to becoming a CSM. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people who are successful in customer success have had extensive careers prior to being a customer success manager. It's because they need that balance of experience to be able to bring to the table so that they can sort of be a jack of all trades and bring a lot to the table in front of the customer. A lot of the other stuff, the product experience can be taught on the job, but it's really the relationship experience and in a lot of ways the industry experience that's crucial and vital. And the other thing for me in an interview is just having a connection with that person. If they can't feel comfortable and laugh with me, then I would be concerned that they can't do that with anybody, or especially a CIO or CEO. So, those are really some of the most important things that I would say.
Yeah, I must completely agree with you on those behavior skills, actually, for most customer facing functions. So, what's your technique to check for these skills during the interview process?
What do they like? What do they dislike? What are they looking for out of a manager, out of a company? You can see on paper whether that person has the skills, and they wouldn't be sitting in front of you unless you felt like they were potentially a candidate. To me, you need to take that time to get to know that person both inside and out as best you can. And a lot of that is done really just through having a conversation. And interviewing is something I've done a lot of over my career, even at a young age. And so it's something I'm very comfortable with, and I like to have a lot of fun with it. And I'm always happy to share with my candidates, anything that they want to know about me or the company. And you just try to be open and honest with them because you want the same out of their experience with you.
Nice. I guess it's a way to get the candidate to sort of reflect your behavior, make them be the same back to you. That's interesting. In addition to these skills and values, I guess there'd also be a lot of internal and external factors that influence how the hires perform once they're on the job, such as leadership changes or like the ongoing pandemic. So, what are some of the red flags that you sort of look out for to get a sense of the feeling in the room?
In terms of the pandemic and what's going on around you, we're all going through a lot. And really, as a leader, you have to pay attention to what the customer success team is going through, what their workload looks like, whether you're going through an organizational transformation, folks on your team, who are typically cool, calm, and collective, showing signs of frustration. As a leader, when you introduce a new idea or way of thinking, it's going to be uncomfortable for the team. Really, the key is to just keep talking about it and don't shy away from the difficult questions. And really how you protect your team is just help them know that you're in the same boat as they are. We're all dealing with the same thing. Most of us have kids at home that are running around while you're trying to be serious on a call. Just know that your customers are okay with it, your manager is okay with it, and we all know that you're doing the best. And I think those are really the best thing you can do, for your team is make sure that they know it's okay, right? If they need to take care of something that's personal and they're doing their job, do what you have to do. As a leader, the best thing you can do right now is just be understanding, because this won't be forever.
Great attitude there towards the team, Mike. Change is something that we all tend to resist. So, how do you actually comfort your CSMs to trust you and take that leap of faith in the time of transition?
Yeah, I mean, it's common for CSMs to not have 100% faith during a transformation. So it's a give and take a lot of the time, but really it's about, you need to introduce the change, right? It's about getting it out there. It's about being transparent about it, Sheree. And once you get it on the table, there are going to be questions, and there are going to be hard questions. Some of them you might be able to answer right away. Some you might have to go back and circulate with your peers to come up with the proper answer. But it's also about your team knowing that you're going through the transition too with them, and you're not going to leave them behind. And taking the time and having the patience with them through this transition is a must and is necessary. You can have a new employee come in and it's not a transition for them, so it's easy for them to to basically take on, this is my role and responsibility. For somebody who's been doing something different for 5 or 10 years, that transition period is going to take much longer, and you have to be patient with that person. You have to be willing to sort of walk alongside them, carry them if you need to, and answer those tough questions and really help them through it, and you have to be willing to do it yourself. There's a lot of different things that have to take place, during a transition like that. And you got to be willing to, to be the leader in those situations. That's when your team most needs you.
Right. Do you have any examples of an uncomfortable situation that you were able to handle in a nice way? And can you share what lessons you took away from that?
Yeah, I mean, very good question, Shri. I do. One comes to mind. I mean, at one point in time, I was part of an organization where the CSMs were doing a lot of support responsibilities in terms of they were, as an example, they would be reviewing incidents with their customers. And really, that is, in my vision, that is not the role of customer success. So, in helping someone transition away from that, you have to help them see the value in, if you're asking them to focus on business objectives, you have to help them see the value in having the conversation at the CIO or CEO level of what understanding their business values can bring to the table as a CSM, right? You're not going to lose a customer at a low management level. You're going to lose a customer based off of a CIO, CEO, or board of directors decision. If you're not involved and engaged with those people at that high level, and they don't feel that you have their best interests at mind, they're going to look at other solutions that do the same thing that your solution does. So it's really about the relationship, and it's about the trust that's built at that level, and helping and ensuring that customer understands that you have their best interests at hand. So that's how you help your CSM understand that, or at least initiate that conversation. And then you have to be open to whatever feedback they may have, but eventually they have to pull themselves, through that transition.
Great example there, Mike. So what are some of the other factors that you've seen which have an impact on the experience of a CSM?
I think first and foremost, it's internal tools. You really have to give your team the tools and the resources that they need, that they feel confident in, to help them be successful. It's also buy-in from stakeholders, having supporting expert resources. I know I just mentioned resources, but having those expert resources that know the technical nitty-gritty and can step in and have a conversation with the customer alongside the CSM is crucial at times. And I think the most important thing is really perception of the CSM around the company. The CSM needs to be looked at in a way that there's an understanding across the company that the CSM has the best interests of the customers in the company at top of mind. And the CSM is that resource that is going to provide the best feedback we could possibly get from our customers. And ultimately, I believe, help shape and drive the direction that the company will go in the future. So the CSM really needs to be held in high regard, and the perception needs to be there, especially from a sales organization, most definitely, of, this is my go-to person. This is the person I know I need to trust, because they have the relationship with the customer, of the mindset that they're a trusted advisor to the customer.
Nice. I'm sure that you'll agree that CSMs are typically under a lot of stress, and they're sort of stuck between the customer and your product team. So how do you keep them positive when they feel they're not getting the right support from the rest of the organization?
Yeah, great point there, Shri. I mean, CSMs are under constant state of flux and stress, and that certainly tears on them, and they get pulled in many different directions. What is the organization asking to do? What is the customer asking to do? And when it comes to a specific piece of functionality within a product, you really need to rely on process. If the product team can explain why that piece of functionality isn't standard within the product to the customer, then that's understandable, and we'll work with the customer to get that in as an enhancement request. If it goes in as an enhancement request, the customer needs to be clear and have a good understanding, and that's the CSM's job, on what does the process look like for that enhancement request, right? Does it get put into the system? How many people have to agree that it's something that they need as their functionality as well for it to get put into the roadmap and then ultimately into development and production. How long does that process take? So, it's about helping the customer understand that process. But the next thing that, and probably if we backed up, the most important thing is the relationship with the CSM and the customer, and the internal product team. The CSM is really the keeper of that relationship, and they need to be the one to step in and say, is this something that we need to focus on right now as a company? Or, hey, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, we need to have a discussion around this and talk about how can we get this on the roadmap for future success? And is there a workaround that we can do in the meantime to help you be successful in your immediate need?
Great inputs, Mike. As a leader, you're also responsible for your CSM's professional growth, right? So do you run workshops or provide access to educational content and courses to help your CSMs level up? And what are some of the factors you need to consider to make sure your CSMs are having a fulfilling career?
I think there's so many answers to that question. If I take the end of it first, what are the factors that you need to consider, of a CSM, and their intangibles, soft skills are the first thing that come to mind. And that's really, that piece at least is led by the leadership team. We do something now at Infor called enablement sessions. And so we have a team that essentially puts together on a weekly basis some tips and tricks and some great training for the CSMs to really keep them sharp, keep certain things top of mind. And it's very helpful in leading discussions that CSMs have with their customers, and leading their development as well. I think the other things that are important there are making sure that you have product certification courses available to the CSMs, and also courses that help them understand what are some of the other roles within your organization, right? So from a product standpoint, you always want the CSMs either getting better at the products that they're on or having an opportunity to learn more about other products. CSMs from the dawn of what a customer success manager was, have always have that zest and that yearn for more information. And I think you need to make sure you have some of that good content at their fingertips. From the perspective of knowing other roles and responsibilities, CSMs, they want to know how the product works, but they also want to know how a company and organization works. So I think giving them training also on what other roles within the company do is definitely an intangible, and helping them understand their role better. And also from a career progression standpoint, maybe they see something that fits their personality better, or they want to try out. Listen, I don't want to lose good people. I want them to stay within the company, even if that means losing them to another organization.
I wish all leaders would take that approach to invest in their people and keep them in the org, come what may. How do you think about workloads? I guess there's that ratio that people would typically strive towards to say, so many customers per CSM, but budgets may not always permit that right number. So what do you see as your role as a leader in such circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, this is always going to be a challenge of leadership within the customer success industry. Different companies, different products within those companies, and the way that you interact with the customer, all of those things are considerations. Putting a number on how many customers a CSM should have, or putting a dollar amount to, what's the ACV a CSM should hold on an annual basis, those things are very challenging to answer. And if you just look at the paper aspect of it, you're really going to struggle as an organization and leading your customer success team. So I think the things I like to look at, listen, Sheree, I have a lot of trust for my team, and I always start out, whether it's within a new company or owning a new team, to have that level of trust. I'm going to listen to my CSMs. If they tell me that they're overwhelmed, we're going to talk about the specific reasons why that is. And if I can help, that's great. But if it's interchanging of workloads or taking a customer off of their plate, then that's what needs to be done. It's not always looking at the piece of paper and being able to tell that answer. In some situations, you might need to add some headcount. In others, you might need to reduce the level of responsibility of the CSMs. I've gone through organizations where the CSM is considered a dumping ground and they're doing everything. So, part of what you might have to do is hold some of those other pillars within your organization accountable for what their job, their roles and responsibilities are in order to lighten that workload on your CSM team.
Makes a lot of sense, Mike. We now move to the next section of our podcast, which is our rapid fire section. Here's the first question. If you were to write a book, what genre will you pick?
I would say probably travel literature. Love to travel. Like to write about in my own journal about my travels. So I think that's something that would come natural to me.
Very nice. So do you travel a lot?
I was Shri pre-pandemic, but I will again, and I do love to travel, with my family for the most part, and we just like to explore new places. So
Here's the next question. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
I would say surprisingly, it's don't take yourself too seriously. You'll never get out alive. Somebody told me that when I was a young man, and I try to remind myself of that when, I'm personally feeling stressed out or you feel like the world's closing in on you.
That's great. Here's the last question. If you were famous, what do you think you would be famous for?
I guess I hope I'd be famous for being an advocate for those who need a voice. I mean, there's a reason I like to lead and be a manager. And, as a younger man, I was captain of my sports teams. It's because I like to take on that responsibility. So I hope I would be famous for doing some good in the world for sure.
Great answer, Mike. Now we're moving to the final section. I'll be asking questions from our Slack community for customer onboarding, implementation, and CS, known as pre-flight, and also from our audience on LinkedIn and Twitter. So here's the first one. What degree of communication is needed during a transition phase? How do you decide what to share and what not to share with your team?
Very good questions. I think from a communication standpoint, if we're talking about top level, SVP of customer success down, I think a monthly communication to the team is very important. Level of transparency. You have to have faith, and this is a weird way to describe this, but I have faith that my 7-year-old is going to be able to comprehend eventually what I'm telling him and talking to him about. And so in a lot of ways, I treat him like an adult, and that's how we all want to be treated. So I think the more transparency you can give, the better it's going to be for organization. Get the ideas and the concerns and the thoughts out there within the community, let them evolve, and make sure you can help sort of reshape that discussion based off of the concerns coming back your way. Rather than hold on those things to the end, there's going to be a period of time where people have to struggle through those changes. You might as well be as soon as you feel comfortable communicating them to the broader audience. You share everything that you feel is probably 75% baked. That's the way I would look at it. If it's an idea without much meat around it, then you have to hold those things back until they're better developed. But if it's an idea with a lot of meat around it and it just needs to be sort of communicated or pushed through a few more heads, then absolutely get it out there to the broader audience and let them give you, poke holes in it and give you some feedback.
Perfect. Here's the second question. How do you lift people to psychologically accept change coming their way and then help them embrace the change?
Yeah, great question, Shri. And I think first and foremost, what you have to do is just get the changes out there on the table and let them react to it. You can't control how someone's going to react to information. Once that's happened, I think what you can do is really talk to them about, listen, I'm on board with these changes and here's why. Here's where I feel, or as an organization, we feel we can be more impactful with a customer and why. And those are the reasons that we're making these changes. You have to explain the why of the change. And, how do you really help your team through it? You can only take them so far. It's kind of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Not everyone in the organization is going to be on board with every change that you make. You have to be prepared that there might be some attrition within your organization based off of making some drastic changes to how you go to market and how you work with your customers. So, it's being prepared for that. It's being open and having those one-on-ones with your team and talking them through, what are your concerns? What are your challenges? But ultimately, once you've talked through all those concerns, you voiced the opinion of this is where we want to go and how we want to get there, eventually they have to come to grips themselves with what those changes are. And you don't expect them to evolve overnight. You expect the evolution to take time, but there have to be little steps along the way that you can see they're getting towards, that next rung, that next step on the stairs, that next rung in the ladder.
Got it. You probably touched upon the next question already. You've been part of transitions before. What's something that you've seen go wrong, and what did you learn from it as a result?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Shri, and I feel fortunate having gone through a few of these transitions because it's really helped with the one we're going through now. And I'll tell you, a past transition we went through, the CSMs didn't feel like their voice was heard during that transition. And I think it caused a large disconnect between our executive leadership and the customer success team. And what I mean by that is the CSMs are the voice of the customer, and what they do for the customer essentially is what the customer is expecting them to do. Now, it doesn't mean we can't transition how we go to market and what we do for the customer, but we also need to have some give and take about, how we're going to make that change and how does that transition our thinking. And if the CSMs don't feel like they're heard in that process of how you get from A to Z, then you're really going to alienate a lot of them and they're going to get frustrated and just push away. And so, I feel I don't want to put my SVP now on the spot, but I will say one thing she is unbelievable at is she is always willing to talk to any CSM, and she is always willing to answer the most difficult questions and listen and try to help the organization herself get through this transition as best we can, right? And I think that's part of it is her having the mentality and the understanding that it's going to be rocky and it's not going to be easy, and that's okay. But that trickles down to our directors, to our managers, and ultimately to the CSMs, and at least they feel heard and they feel like they're on the boat with the SVP and with the leadership and the executive leadership, and we're all sort of, we're on the life raft and we're trying to get to the island or back to home together.
Lovely answers, Mike. And here's the last question for the show. What advice do you have for other CS leaders?
Yeah, so I think I sort of just covered some of this, but in the transition of a CSM org, you really need, as a leader, you need to understand the history of what that CS organization has gone through. And I'm not just talking about the last 6 months and why you've been hired to replace your predecessor, but I mean the last 6, 7, 8 years of what customer success as that company has gone through, because you need to understand where you've been to know where you're going. And if you're not in tune with that, you might, again, alienate a lot of the people that went through some of those prior transitions. And, not really understanding that history can sort of make you look like you have egg on your face as a leader and as an executive. So, I think that is crucial. And I think we say it in everyday life, is really not repeating the same mistakes that people before you made, right? History repeats itself. Let's try to make sure it doesn't. But I would say the other thing is really, if your CSMs don't feel empowered within the company and the organization, that's something as a leader you have to change within the company. The CSMs should feel like they have more of a voice than anyone does within the company. They are ultimately the voice of the customer. And really, as I mentioned before, the primary resource in determining the direction your company will go in the future. So if they feel empowered, they will do great things for you, and they won't ever be afraid to speak up because they know that it's okay to do that. And I think the last thing, Shri, is just be great to your team and great for them, right? Show them that you're passionate about what you do. You're passionate about them being successful and their customers, and I think if you do that and you treat your team the way they would want to be treated, you're gonna create that brand of loyalty that you're hoping for, and you're gonna have a lot more retention than attrition in your career as a leader in the customer success field. So those are really the things that I think that are important to me, are that I bring to the table, and I think are important to teams and what they want out of a leader.
Perfect. I think you made three very important points there, Mike. Thank you so much for answering all our questions, and it was great having you on our show.
Thank you, Shri. This has been great. Thanks for your time, and the best of luck and safety to you and your family.
And folks, thanks for tuning in. If you've missed our previous episodes, do subscribe to our podcast and go back and listen to them. And if you aren't part of our pre-flight community yet, do join and get access to more exclusive content on all things onboarding, implementation, and CS. Thank you.